North Korea is a nation shrouded in mystery. It's almost impossible for an outsider to get access into the country, especially an American. And even if a person managed to enter the country, they'd be chaperoned around at all times by a North Korean official. Visitors to North Korea spend the vast majority of their time on a pre-planned tour of Pyongyang, the country's capital, guided by these officials as they visit the various monuments, museums, landmarks, and other cultural exhibits, aimed at displaying a vibrant and prosperous country thriving under a system of self-reliance, or juche, and communism thanks to the wonderful leadership of Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, and now Kim Jong-un. This is the image that North Korea tries to portray to the outside world, but what about the rest of the country? How does it stack up against this idealistic official portrait? In her book, Nothing to Envy, journalist, reporter, and author Barbara Demick details her experience in interviews with 6 North Korean defectors who managed to leave the country despite the odds. With the help of these individuals, we outsiders are now able to have a glimpse of what goes on in North Korea, where no one else can see except for North Koreans themselves. It's a fascinating story that I think is wonderfully woven together by the author in a way that draws the reader in by allowing them to empathize with the lives of these 6 individuals who come from what feels like another world. From all walks of life, this is the best way to describe the men and women that the author interviewed in order to develop this book. One man was a college student who studied at one of the most prestigious North Korean universities, while another lived the life of an orphan on the streets. There's the story of a woman who was an earnest North Korean patriot who saw her life slowly fall apart around her. The story of a woman whose father was a former South Korean POW that lived the life of a pariah, knowing that she could never advance her position in society. A devoted doctor, unable to balance her social life and work, who became disillusioned over her own inability to help others. And finally, the story of a woman desperate to leave the country despite all odds, knowing in her heart that something was very wrong with North Korea. This book represents the resurfacing of the difficult memories that all of these men and women share as they bring back the often painful details of their past, if only to give others an almost horrifying glimpse at the world that they gave up so much to leave behind. At its heart, the entire book is a human interest story about the sacrifices, struggles, and even little triumphs that all of humanity can understand and share. The book also has a fair share of political commentary for those interested in learning just how North Korea became the country that it is today. From Kim Jong-il's nuclear weapons programs to the Songun, or military first strategy, that diverts much of the food resources in the country to the members of the military, as well as the country's continual military tension with its neighbor to the south, the North Korean government has often found itself in opposition with the West, Western allies, and even sometimes its own nominal allies like China. From the large network of internal spying networks that encourage reporting dissent among other North Koreans to the heavily censored and state-controlled media, North Korea is about as close as the world has come to a truly Orwellian society. Well, with all that information out of the way, though, we come to the question of whether or not this book is worth reading. As someone personally interested in learning about North Korea, this book provides new and previously unobtainable information by those with personal experience. I found the book difficult to put down from once the narrative begins all the way to the epilogue at the end. This reading delight, though, belies a true grit and sadness that runs through this story of survival and sacrifice made by real people in extraordinary conditions. If reading about North Korea sounds boring or uninteresting, reading about the struggles of the North Korean people may just be plain upsetting and frustrating, especially as an American. Overall, I'd rate this book about an 8 out of 10 for its compelling narrative in spite of the grim and continuing nature of its subject. It satiates a certain level of curiosity in someone vaguely knowledgeable about the North Korean situation. The level of detail may be more than what some people might expect. Maybe a high school student can appreciate and have developed just enough empathy to understand the value of what this book has to offer.